Yeah, just to be here. 49, 23, 2020. Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, torched off. Oh, I have this X dollars in here. 1.2 billion. Which is actually a meaningful percentage of his net worth. He's like worth 50 billion, according to Forbes or whoever. Imagine if that money had been spent on track and trace. Look at that. He spent 176 million in the month that he announced that he was quitting. And he quit at the beginning of the month. Wild. He said that he's going to give some money to help with track and trace. Test, track, trace. The only solution, really. Imagine if. That's enough capital to solve for track and trace, probably globally. Certainly in the United States. Imagine if he'd been the guy that wrote that check instead of haplessly spending that money on a campaign that was, I mean, I could have told him he was going to fail. So could a lot of other people. Cataract. No, not the one in your eye. A waterfall. Simple as that, guys. Not that sophisticated. But just thought I would switch it up a little bit. Go with the second meaning of a word rather than the presumptive.
Cataract.
In fact, it comes across as the first meaning, a large waterfall. Cascade, rapids, whitewater, torrent. As we see the red dots on the maps of our countries and the world multiply, we realize there's nowhere left to escape to. We don't need our imagination to start fearing the worst. We watch videos of convoys of big black army trucks carrying dead bodies from small Italian towns to nearby crematories as if we were watching our own funeral processions. This is a Turkish guy translated into English, an article that I read. He won the Nobel Prize back in 2006. We are afraid, and we don't need to be reminded of that. It unearths the fear of death in a very raw, it brings it raw to bear for us as human beings. In order to contain a future outbreak, a city, state, or country needs to be able to identify and isolate enough cases to prevent the effective R, which is the number of secondary cases per infectious case, from getting above 1. It's simple math. That's how you stop this thing. It has to stay below 1 and meaningfully below 1 for long enough to die off. This means that every infected person has to infect no more than one other. Achieving that goal would keep the number of cases showing up every day from increasing. Okay, that again is simple math. How do you do it? Test, track, trace. The only way. And you use social isolation as your tool until you can do that safely. Moreover, there's a direct relationship between the number of cases that show up each day and the resources it will take to conduct contact tracing and isolation to prevent further spread of the virus. Locations that exit earlier will need more resources, not fewer, than those that wait until the number of new cases each day has been minimized. Almost no locations are prepared in terms of tests and public health personnel. What does that mean? That means that we have to get the number of cases down with social distancing and self-quarantine, self-isolation first so that track and trace can work. The reason track and trace worked in places like South Korea, Singapore, etc., was because the number of cases when they started doing it was sufficiently small. Exiting too soon is like thinking you can cut your parachute off at 2,000 feet because it slowed you down enough. Perfect. Carl Bergstrom, biology professor at the University of Washington. What does it mean to go away? What parts of us are snatched away by Alzheimer's? And what parts remain? In a searching, poetic inquiry into dementia, Lynn Castile Harper delves into a disease that afflicts some 6 million Americans and yet seems shrouded in secrecy. It suffers hidden away in institutions, its symptoms cloaked in a peculiar, telling language of terror and contempt. A thief, kidnapper, slow-motion murderer, Alzheimer's purportedly robs, steals, and erases one's memory, mind, personality, and even one's very self. Harper writes in On Vanishing. That persons with dementia are so readily envisioned as vanishing or vanishing as vanished or vanishing, succumbing to an especially terrifying, slow-moving, unstoppable vortex of suffering, surely speaks to anxieties beyond the ordinary fears of death and disease. This is Paul Segal's review of On Vanishing by Lynn Castile Harper in the Times. I used it. This quote is here because there are worse things. Yes, you could lose yourself and your mind. Are lockdowns accelerating autocracy? I'm not going to get into this. I think autocratic governments are abusing the control that they believe they have as a consequence of this pandemic to further oppress in those places where they are oppressing. I mean, you could argue that Trump has done the same. I've got a lot in this one. How close to the edge are we in the model? So I've been studying the modeling of disease progression, of the pandemic progression, and it turns out the most popular model is the most poorly built and is the least robust and has been critiqued the most widely by epidemiologists. That's the short version. And here's some bad news. This remdesivir antiviral doesn't work. I thought it might. I thought it could be an enormously positive thing. No benefit for coronavirus patients. Now that is a Chinese study, but it's by far the largest, and it's probably right, unfortunately. But on the flip side, an mRNA vaccine. These are the most promising because they can be developed quickly, and this has been developed in like 2 months or 40 some odd days. Out of the UK, has promise. It's already been injected to the first 500 people. Now the downside to the upside is they're not going to expose these people to coronavirus to see if it worked. They're going to wait to see if they get sick. And so that's going to take months. And it also ironically requires the number of people who are sick with coronavirus to remain relatively high in the British population in order for them to have enough statistics to say whether or not the antibodies were generated and whether the vaccine worked. See, it's not as simple as just having a vaccine. It's just not even close. That was The Luckiest by kind of Grannis and in Imaginary Future. Love it. Just love it. It's a beautiful duet. Pick of the day is me with the kids at the top of the Woodwards building, which I showed you a picture looking out from some number of updates ago. And the positive life change of the day is I am pretty sure now, 70% I'm going to put it at, that I had COVID. I had COVID in late January. Hearing about other people who had cases of COVID, I thought at first, no way I could have had it. It was the weirdest flu I've ever had. And I've had pneumonia twice, so I know what I speak. Sorry about that. Camera trouble. But to think that with greater certainty that I had it does confer on me. I'd love to donate my plasma. I'd love to know with an antibody test. I'd be happy to donate my plasma. My friend Nick Seddon, who is the dentist who was at that conference who got coronavirus, has been donating his plasma as well as doing emergency dental procedures. So good for him, but I would happily do it as well. That is my COVID positive life changer of the day. I love you guys. I love making these, and I love that you listen to them. And I hope to speak to each of you guys soon.